Revelations in the Epstein files continuing to send, well, really seismic shockwaves through Europe, not least in the UK, could spell the end of Prime Minister Keir Starmer. And Tony is looking at it for us.
Yes, so in this morning's papers, Keir Starmer has woken up to a set of headlines that aren't positive for him, although he won't be surprised. The Guardian, Starmer fights to regain control over party after McSweeney exit. That's after his Chief of Staff took the fall over the appointment of a very controversial US ambassador who has been revealed to have extremely close perhaps financial ties to Jeffrey Epstein. The Telegraph has the headline, Starmer plays his last card. Scottish pro-independence paper The National says calls made for Starmer to be the next one out of number 10. What we're really looking at is a number of papers sort of heralding the downfall of the Prime Minister. If you look in the Financial Times, they're looking at this crunch week he faces to hold on to power. But there is a real suggestion that his downfall may be something of a foregone conclusion. This article's already talking about who could replace him, and that's a real question mark, who could replace him within the ranks of Labour. Of course, it's election season. There are by-elections at the end of the month that the Labour Party stands to lose a seat in, and also local elections, Scottish parliamentary elections, coming up in the spring. There's a real question as well, of course, as we go through all these findings in the Epstein files, what does accountability look like? And the resignation of a Chief of Staff for many people in Downing Street doesn't seem like enough. The Times has this cartoon. You have Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, cowering behind his desk and a sign on his desk saying the buck stops there, with an arrow pointing to his Chief of Staff, the suggestion being that this is a fairly meagre form of accountability given the crimes.
More politics for you now. Portugal, centre-left winning that decisive victory against far-right Ventura. What do the papers say?
Well, it's a very decisive victory. On the front page of Diario de Noticias, you have Seguro Presidente. That is a triumphant Seguro standing up, applauding. Of course, perhaps a wordplay, a very fairly obvious wordplay. Seguro means safe. And of course, he was the safe choice, the less radical choice, given that the alternative in this extremely rare second round of elections was the far right. There's also the comment, though, quoting his opponent here down below, Andre Ventura, that he considers his 33% that he won, nevertheless, in this vote, anoints him from now on the leader of the right. On the inside pages, you have an editorial commenting on the fact that this nevertheless makes this centre-left socialist the new major force of the left, and for this columnist that's a good thing. They say it's a promise of stability and predictability for the country. Expresso, however, has this quotation from Ventura in a headline saying, "We will soon be governing the country." In other words, the far right did take a defeat yesterday, but they consider that they are on the way. They may have lost the battle, but they haven't lost the war, they feel.
To France now. 9 police officers going on trial today over alleged police brutality. This is 8 years ago during the gilets jaunes protests, if you remember those.
Yes, so this is being covered in a number of papers. This is a headline in La Croix. Of course, this is after 9 CRS officers, that's the riot police, followed a group of protesters into a Burger King in 2018 where they'd taken shelter from tear gas. They claimed they were convinced they were looters. They came in to kick them off the premises. And images released in recent days by Libération, show these really violent kickings and beatings being given to these protesters in this Burger King. This investigation from Libération says despite the enormous violence, none of them have faced sanctions from the Ministry for the Interior. They face up to 9 years in prison for illegitimate use of violence. It'll be really interesting to see how that trial plays out.
Finally, a new alternative perhaps to pay rises. It is apparently beehives.
Yes,
really?
Well, perhaps a meek alternative. The idea is that by putting beehives on or around your office premises, it's a payoff for the mental health of workers as well as the productivity of an organisation. Shouldn't every organisation operate with the same sense of shared purpose as the worker bees in a beehive. The idea is that the employees will be inspired by the work ethic of the worker bee and that they will also gain, as I say, a mental health dividend. The practice is, of course, controversial, as it sounds rather like management nonsense, but of course greenwashing as well, because as we know, the overpopulation of honeybees in cities is posing a real threat to wild pollinators. So don't be fooled by beehives on your office roof.
No. Well, we've had mosquitoes in the air conditioning system, so perhaps that was a bit of a precursor. It's going to be bees next. Antonio with the papers on France 24. That's the latest. More news straight after the break. Stay with us.